Nikon has coming out with a new FTZ adapter, a Mark II if you would like. Now we don't know too much about it. We know that it's a redesigned body, and most likely that notch that you see there is going to be gone. Now, what could this new adapter do? Well, the Mark I was noticeably slower at autofocus than using native glass. But accuracy is pretty good. And I think where Nikon has an opportunity here, if they can improve upon those issues that it had with the first one, if you can improve upon the speed of the autofocus, I think they're going to have a hit here. One of the things I noticed is when I got the adapter for, do I have it right here? Yeah, this is the EF to RF adapter. As soon as I put this on and I put my EF lenses on the R5, I didn't notice anything. And that's what Nikon customers want. They want an FTZ adapter that doesn't have any sort of issues. They don't want the autofocus to be slower. I mean, why would you? So I think it'd be really great. But there's also one other news story I want to bring in here. So let me go back to the Nikon FTZ adapter and bring up the story about a new Nikon. It's meant to be an entry-level camera. Now, this is going to be a video-centric camera, and it's most likely going to come out in the first half of 2022. And their primary purpose here is to attract young customers. What I'm kind of thinking is this is going to be something that's going to, well, it should. If it wants to do well, it needs to aim at the same market with the same capabilities as the ZV-1 or the ZV-E10. I'm pretty impressed with those cameras. I think they work very, very well. I would be more than happy, if I was starting out doing a YouTube channel, I would have no problems using a ZV-1, for example. Even though the new one comes out, I still like the old one. I still like that camera. The way Sonys are able to allow you to go from an area where the exposure is very different to an area in bright and still focus on the subject, realizing, okay, let's see if I can work as best of a miracle as I can to keep the subject exposed properly. And I just really like that about Sony cameras. So I think Nikon could potentially have a hit here. What we do notice from sales figures coming out of Amazon, the cameras that sell the most are not the high-end R5s, R1s, or R3s, alphas. They're the cameras that are priced around that $1,000 mark. They seem to do the best. Now, one other thing, the Nikon Z 40mm f2 lens was also announced, and that is available for pre-order. So now let's turn this over to my panel, and I'm going to start off with you, John. There's a lot to unpack here. We have a new Nikon entry-level camera that's supposed to be coming out. We have an adapter, the FTZ adapter, that, well, leaves some Nikon fans frustrated. And of course,
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. So, I mean, one thing I know. I mean, I'm a Canon shooter, so I've not having used the Nikons or the adapters or whatever. All I know is basically what I've always they say. What all I know is what I read in the newspapers to paraphrase whoever it was. But I know one thing about that adapter is, it's got that I guess it's like a tripod mount, whatever, and actually projects below the bottom of the camera, which made, as I understand it, using the camera on a tripod is really difficult unless you used the tripod mount on the adapter, which then, of course, could, depending on the lens or the body, could put strain on the mount that you don't really want. So it seems like some logical redesign of that adapter, and hopefully, if it does actually work smoother, because as we know, those of us who use Canons and have used the EF to RF adapter know how smoothly that works with EF glass. So hopefully Nikon is getting it right. Yeah. Now, of course, they still have to get their autofocus system generally with their models, up to the level of where Canon and Sony is. But that's another story. But at least it should work as well with the F mount lenses as with the Z mount lenses. Other than that, in terms of the entry level camera, well, again, Nikon needs all the new users they can get. So if they can get a new body in there that actually draws, that draws people in to their ecosystem, the better for them and better for the industry as a whole.
Some people will take Sony to task because at the end of every full frame lens, or at the end of every lens, they have this adapter that's built in, and people will make fun of that. And, I don't understand why. One of the nice things about the Sony E-mount is, and I get it, it was designed for APS-C, but it doesn't matter whether you have a full frame or an APS-C, those lenses will work. You just have to deal with a different focal range. But for other companies such as Canon and Nikon, yeah, an adapter is important. So very, very good commentary, John. James, your thoughts?
So in terms of the adapter, I think hopefully we do see some improvements on the autofocus as John talked about. I need to see something very. In terms of adapters, like Red and Canon are starting to spoil me. So with what they're coming out with, like Canon with its variable NDs, its focal reducer, now Red is producing a PL electronic ND adapter as well. So, if it gets to just a simple adapter and just, okay, the autofocus better, that's cool, but and that's great that they've addressed those issues, but they have a whole lot of catching up to do. And
their lens lineup sucks.
And now to that potential camera, like ZV-1 Sony style camera. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't the ZV-1 a compact point and shoot?
It is a compact size. I honestly, I haven't looked at it in a while, so old man memory, I'm having trouble remembering if it's a fixed lens. I believe it is a fixed lens.
I believe it is. I think so.
Yeah.
It's not an ILC.
So my issue with that is it's a 1-inch sensor. Yeah, because I know it was a 1-inch sensor.
Right.
It's this. Like, you got Nikon's coming with a compact 1-inch style, potentially 1-inch style camera. Like, yeah, that's cool and nice, but if I got something like this that's slightly smaller than 1 inch, but it can still take great photos and great stills. I can edit everything right there on the phone, upload it right there without much issue. I personally, and this is not to talk, this is not at Nikon directly. This is just the compact, the compact market in general. I don't see where its benefits are in terms of a smartphone, especially with the newer cameras that have the multiple different lens options that you get with them. And the ability to just do everything right there on the smartphone. What if it's Samsung? What if it's iPhone? They're all delivering qualities that compete with the image quality, because you're not getting that much benefit. It would be different if it was an APS-C sensor or a full frame sensor where you can clearly see the difference in those underlids. You're not really seeing that difference. So I don't have much hope for that.
So James, one thing I noticed is you're starting to lift up the hood. You're getting into that engine and that carburetor. Me, I try to stay at the conceptual level. When I look at the ZV-1, I look at the capabilities of it. I don't really care about the sensor size. But now that you brought it up, and I want to sort of take this to Magnus, and then James, if you want to come back and comment on it. For that $1,000 point that I mentioned, there's no reason, and I get it, that's more than the ZV-1, but there's no reason that Nikon couldn't release a sub-$1,000 camera with either an APS-C or full frame. Nikon has an opportunity here to aim at young consumers that don't need these 4K 60, don't need a lot of these advanced features, but give them something that does their use cases very, very well. And yes, I think it should at least be an APS-C. And one thing I think the APS-C works well in is if you're going to be working in relatively low light, it does really, really well. And in bright light, it works really, really well too. And once you start to go into full frame, then you need to really start to look at variable ND filters, because you're going to get too much light in open sunlight. Like if I take the R5 outside on a bright sunny day and I got my 24-105 and I don't have a filter, I'm at f22 and I cannot shoot less than an f22. And that's the problem with full frame. Now, if I had my Canon 70D or a 90D and I had a similar lens, I would have more flexibility. I don't think that camera needs full frame. I think an APS-C type sensor would work. But Magnus, I see you smiling, nodding a little bit and going, tell us, don't hold back. What do you think? What do you really, really think?
Well, my thoughts, honestly, are really in this particular market. For example, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the Sony ZVE10 was an APS-C sensor. I could be wrong on that, but I was pretty
Yeah, I
sure
think
that
so.
they increased the sensor size from the Sony ZV1. And it also brought in a lot of great features for vloggers to really kind of automatically make it easy for them to give them that shallow depth of field, use the camera, make it do everything for them, and just not have to worry. However, I believe that Nikon has a particular advantage in this point, and I'll tell you why. Nikon in itself and its brand name, when somebody sees you with a Nikon or a Canon, they recognize those brands
Yeah.
as camera brands. So when they see someone walk in with a Nikon, they're going to say, hey, wow, that's a nice camera without knowing anything about it. And I'm sure you guys have seen this before out there when you're shooting. Someone who knows nothing about what you're doing will say, that's a nice camera
Yes.
without knowing
Hmm.
having a clue.
Hmm.
And a lot of people get excited with that. So when they buy a Nikon, they're going to get that type of response. So that is an advantage that Nikon will have. And if they come into the market with an APS-C or a full frame at that price point and make it great for vloggers, I think that you do have a high chance of actually doing well. I will say this though, and this is kind of offshoots to Canon. With Canon's expected launch of their, really low priced full frame camera, I get the feeling that it's almost like Canon doesn't want to release anything smaller than full frame anymore, and then
Mm,
get people to
Right.
go just to upgrade their cameras and realize the benefits of full frame. And if they can design it in
I
an
agree.
inexpensive price point, Canon's going to kind of stand out from the competition from an entry level position when it
Yeah.
comes to the pictures that people can take. So
Yeah.
I would imagine that Nikon's going to go for a larger sensor too, because they see that happening and they're going to want to have their place in the market. So that's my opinion.
And it
that's a
was,
good point. And I see John nodding too. So, John, what do
Yeah.
you?
No, I mean that's the point I was making, before in terms
Yeah.
of the conjecture about Canon introducing APS-C, bodies. I mean, the more I look at it, the less reason I see for them to do it, especially since I don't see any sign of them developing lenses that would go with a crop body. So, no, I totally agree with Marcus on that point.
yeah, yeah, and Mangus, the
Magnus,
ZE10
excuse me.
is APS. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
it is an APS-C and interchangeable. I was just
yeah,
talking about in terms of compact, like a compact fixed.
right.
If it's an interchangeable APS-C, then yes, it's an interesting. I will say that does change the conversation.
Okay.
Now,
Well, great.
doesn't that camera have like a 28 millimeter equivalent lens also, which I think was one of the knocks against it in terms of them marketing it as a vlogging camera, but having a relatively long
Yeah.
lens rather than something that more like a 24 or a 20 or a 16 equivalent.
Not wide enough. I agree. Yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
yeah.
You just need like a 20-foot pole.
Right.
Yep. I do want to bring up a few comments from the field. I think it was Randy who said that the Nikon ZFC, it's the Nikon ZFC is a top-selling Nikon camera right now. So they did definitely get something right with that one. If you like this video, well, stay tuned. I've got more of them coming. But keep in mind, this is a pre-recorded segment from my weekly camera news live show, which is every Friday between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And if you like covering the news and if you would like to collaborate, well, then join me live Friday nights where you can ask questions and interact with the panelists. And panelists cover a range of the camera industry. We have photo experts and video experts. We have camera news or industry insiders. And once in a while, I have some guests from other channels such as Jordan Drake or Dan Watson. But again, thank you so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. Please don't forget to punch that like and subscribe button, as it really does help my channel grow. We'll see you again soon.